Hey guys, I just want to talk to you guys about something that's been on my mind lately. And when it comes to God's promises for our lives, that when God's about to bring about a kingdom spouse or bring a union together, in the last one I talked about how protecting yourself, coming against, the enemy, and dealing with, the tactics and how to stop the enemy, or protecting your spouse, before God brings them back. But on a personal level, I've noticed this with myself, where I almost feel like it's a compulsion. It's for me, it's going back and forth into something, and trying to finally grasp a hold of myself and say no. My spouse is coming home. I can't be doing this stuff. But I almost felt, because I remember hearing from Jeremy, and I got a word recently, and God was talking about how that, yes, sex was designed for marriage, it's not designed outside of it, and it's like, you know, we sit there and we start to get frustrated because something isn't working right, or it's like, how long am I keep waiting for a promise that you have given me? You're going to continue, you're going to bless me, you said you would. And so it seems like, the one thing I'm going to talk to you guys about right now is that you have to understand your promise and how to protect it. Understand that the enemy is going to use temptations in your weakness in your area to try to derail your promise, or he can't necessarily stop it. He can delay it. And I've noticed this in my own life, because the past several months I've been literally fighting with this and just wanting to be free. And so I want you guys to understand, right before your victory, it's just going to feel like it's, one after another. It's one distraction here, it's one thing here. And I'm going to suggest for a lot of you that, you've signed on my channel. If you hear this by mistake and you're not subscribed, I would suggest you subscribe, because, I might be on the spectrum, I might be have autism, whatever, but I'm going to tell you I function very well, and God does speak through me. And one of the things I really feel like the Lord has been trying to get people to understand is that right before you get tempted, the enemy's going to try to mess with your mind. He's going to try to distract you, try to keep you from fulfilling and having that victory, that final victory. And the one thing that I'm going to suggest is that you guys have what I'm going to call them prevention strategies, and it's going to be your thinking there if you don't actually set something up and try to use something. Because I'm telling you, it's like, if, let's just, for example, let's say that you are um, a shopaholic, and you tend to buy things in the grocery store and outflate your budget, and things just don't necessarily make any sense. You should not leave the house with on an empty stomach. You should eat a good meal so you're not sitting there wanting to buy everything. I've had that. I've gone into places. I mean, I've gone to Walmart and like, why am I even here? And then find that I'm being drawn back in because I want food, whatever. And so I'm gonna be talking to you guys right now about how to set up some prevention strategies, and how to set up even, because the thing is, you're gonna have thoughts that are going to come across. You're going to cry about your kingdom spouse. You're going to weep. You're going to wait until God brings them to you. And I'm going to remind you, God does give you the final picture. He has done that. He's done that with me. Some of you, I'm going to say, if you're a stander, your prodigal spouse doesn't know a lot. They're coming into it. And some of them, it's going to hit them kind of rather rudely. Why? Because they didn't know that you were their spouse. And they're going to be like, why didn't they know this before? And what I'm going to tell you is that it's probably because the stander isn't able to handle this kind of information. I remember when, if you guys go back and remember when Jesus did, turn the water into wine, when he did one of the miracles, what was he saying? He says, you can't put new wine into old wineskins. It has to be, it has to be a new wineskin. You can't just whatever, you see. And so, the one thing that, you guys need to understand is that, some of you guys really, some of you might be standards, but then your prodigals may not be able to handle it. They're not going to be able to handle the revelation that God's given them. So, some people might not have your gift, okay? Not everybody's going to be like you, and that's okay. I'm counseling somebody who is literally having a rough patch with their relationship. And I'm going to tell you, anybody out there, okay, and I'm going to tell you, I just got my shop set up. I will have more things in my shop. So if you guys want to bless me, if you want to buy a mug, whatever, if there's something you want to do to bless this channel, because I'm telling you, right now I feel bad for everybody out there in Florida and North Carolina, and I can't necessarily go out there, but I'll donate whatever I can. I'll give the money to Ryan Hall, because guess what? He and his team are going to go out to Florida soon, and they're going to be helping these families, to get their houses back together, And so I'm telling you that God has a plan for your life. And so I'm going to basically suggest that you set up prevention strategies so that when it hits you and you're like, God, you promised this to me. You gave me a marriage promise. You gave this specific person. And I'm going to tell you, and like Ethel Bentega says, if you have peace about it, stay with it. If you don't have peace, then go, okay? God needs his children to be in peace. And a lot of these kingdom unions, God will probably he's already identified who your spouse is, if he's already identified that person. And a lot of the prodigals, and when I talked about yesterday about the final picture and, the putting the puzzle pieces together, you got your little squiggly puzzle pieces, you got your other pieces that connect. And, I really want to say that, God has a way of bringing the changes that we need to have. So don't be impatient, when the Lord is trying to work something out. Because for me, if God had sent my spouse home at the time that I have been struggling and fighting something, do you really think she would really truly understand what I'm going through? She might know it already. God may have already told her. And this is the one thing I'm going to tell you. If you guys are struggling with something, if there's a struggle in any area in your life, pray out, cry out to God, because, your spouse might be having problems and God's going, no, I can't pull them back together yet. I'm ready to, I'm ready, but I'm not ready at that moment yet. You see? And so, and I'm hearing a lot of people on YouTube channels and different, talking about like God said that, or they see that, the rapture is going to happen yet, that God's going to take his children home. But I'm going to tell you, no, not so yet. I really honestly believe what Kat said, and even Robin Bullock, even Hank Kuhlman, that we're at least 100 years off. God still needs to harvest souls. What's he going to use to harvest those souls? The workers, the harvest is plenty, but the workers are so few. So all these kingdom unions, every single one of them is going to have a different gift, a different talent. They're going to know what they have to do to win the lost coins, okay? And I'm phrasing that, I'm nicknaming lost coin, because there are going to be people that these kingdom unions are going to bring into the kingdom of heaven. They're going to get saved. Because why? Because it's a different niche. Okay, I really truly believe that a lot of these kingdom unions have prophetic ability. They have, prophets and prophetess and, evangelists, and, maybe some of you might be people that deal with addictions and, helping people get set free from that, deliverance ministers, however you want to name it. And so, about a couple years ago, back in 2016, 2017, before Harvey hit Houston, God had me release. My sister was heading onto a cruise out of Florida, and they were going to be, the Newsboys were going to be coming through, which is one of my favorite bands. But for a whole week, God had me, I almost felt like I was releasing words for the band, like it gave me a corporate word. And Peter Furler had left to go do his own stuff, but God said, no, I want unity. And this was the first sign that I had that God was not just going to restore my spouse to me, because I had this dream that I had the Newsboys in my house, okay? Because when they would invite me to a new concert or something like that. But so I'm going to tell you that God is going to do the unthinkable for you, okay? So no matter who you guys are out there, I want you to remain focused and stay steadfast on your faith. If God told you he's going to do it, he's going to give you that God-ordained spouse he's already promised you. I'm going to tell you right now, God's kingdom unions are different from a regular marriage. And I'm going to tell you why. Because a lot of you have callings on your life that you basically are going to destroy the enemy's kingdom and going to go after the enemy. I've always had this thing from Ocean's 13 with Saul, where he's like, it's going to be collateral damage, is World War III again. And so I want to put this out here because I want you guys to understand that we want to be able to push to the next limit. We want to be able to continue to trust him, continue to stand, continue to believe, and at the right moment, at the right time, God's going to cause it to happen, okay? But you have to understand that the scales have to be balanced, okay? Your spouse has to work out their bugs too, as well as you. Because this is why the enemy hates these kingdom unions. And that's why he tries to use witchcraft to try to stop them. Okay? You got to cover your union. You got to cancel, rebuke, denounce every form of witchcraft. But at the same time, you got to remember that God has given you already a promise because of what you're going to do. Okay? You two are not just going to be because it's, not just the union. It's going to be the souls that you're going to win into the kingdom. So just remain steadfast and continue to trust that God has a plan for your life. He has not forgotten you, and he's always promised he'll never forsake you. But I really believe the reason why most people that are the standards, that God gives the marriage promise, the prophetic promise to the person that's the standard because they can handle it. The prodigal can't. They're not able to understand or fully grasp the understanding of the promise or the marriage promise until it comes into tuition, and then they know this is why they're supposed to be that person's spouse. Because one of the things I remember listening from Kim Clement was talking about how the whole vision is given outside of time frame. The promise is given outside of its window. Like, for example, let's say that you received a prophetic word 5-6 years ago. It doesn't matter what time the word was given, it still stands. It's God's word. He has to fulfill it. He's obligated to fulfill his word. And so you guys have to understand that it's not your promise, it's the promise that God gave you. Yes, it's his prophetic order, it's his promise. And so you got to understand that no matter the time and the distance, that when it's time for it to orchestrate and to come together, all the pieces are going to start to come together. And I will tell you that warfare will intensify. It will ramp up. Your enemies that you thought your enemies were long gone are going to pop up on the scene and going to start to target you. You're going to have the counterfeits, the people that you might have been involved with before, are going to suddenly become curious in what you're doing. Just because the enemy wants to stop it, and because of the fact that you're blocking seducing spirits and you're blocking any form of witchcraft trying to come against your union, even monitoring spirits. This is very critical. I'm going to remind you that you have to come against every monitoring spirit that the enemy's trying to use. Okay? And here's what I'm going to tell you. This is what I want you guys to understand. So the enemy doesn't know. It's only going to know what you give them. Okay? And so they're going to get desperate. These prodigals or these counterfeits are going to get desperate because they're not finding out any information. They sense something's going on, but they don't know what it is. So you have to protect your spouse. If you don't know the person and they come off a little strange, like asking to get all up in your business and asking you random strange questions, block them. Don't talk to them, because it's probably most likely a monitoring spirit being sent by a witch or a warlock because they're trying to come up with information to know how to block your union or to how to block your finances. So For now on, if you hear me, you're going to start to rebuke, block, and cancel every form of witchcraft coming against your union. And you're also going to ask the Father to blind the eyes of anyone that would try to basically block your union or your blessings, okay? Confuse, block, and scramble anyone that God that is illegally spying in my life. And I would really suggest you go and listen to Stephanie. Listen to her very carefully on this kind of stuff. And so, God is very strategic when he's ready to release a promise like this. When he gets ready to bring your spouse home, I'm going to tell you that it's going to be like a surprise birthday party, and you and your spouse are going to walk into a room. You're going to tie the knot right in front of the presence of your enemies. It could be your childhood nemesis. It could be your doppelganger. It could be anybody out there that hates you, that hates God. And maybe they don't know why they don't like you. Maybe it's just because of the ungodly spirit that has suddenly come upon them and is guiding them or making them feel like, oh, they need to go ahead and make a fictitious claim about you, or say something strange like, oh, well, you owe me child support for a kid that you never got the woman pregnant, and you never found out who this woman was. You don't know who this Eve is, And so I'm gonna make this very clarification here, because I want you guys to understand that there's a lot that the enemy is trying to do in this time and season. He's adamant to try to stop these unions, and he will try any way that he possibly can. So I'm going to tell you, you need to keep, until God brings your spouse across the line, until you two are physically together, if you're spiritually connected in the supernatural and you're having a spiritual marriage, God, usually that's how he does things. He ties you together, marries you in the supernatural, and then throws you back together, and you just end up getting married. That's just how it's going to work. When this happens, when you get close to it and things are about to pop off, you will have some signs around you. You will definitely have some people that are not too friendly, that are going to basically, they're prying for information that they don't need to have. So if they don't look like somebody that you really truly know, and they're not your friends and your family and people that you trust in your close circle, cut them off. Don't talk to them. And if there's anyone in your life or anyone that shouldn't be there, then you maybe need to pray and ask the Lord, do I need to relinquish this person or give this person back to you? Sometimes God will allow specific people to be in our lives for a time and a season. But other times, he pulls them out after that. I had a friend that was a good friend for a while, but, I found some things out that I'm sorry, I can't be friends with somebody that's going to come against my union and is going to use witchcraft to try to block my union. It's like Heart of Ruth talked about. It says some of these unions are going to have multiples. They're going to have multiple babies. They're going to have whole tribes coming out of them. And the enemy doesn't like you, doesn't like your spouse. He doesn't like the fact that you're nurturing and he's not, and this isn't going to go down well if you marry this person, and using your family to try to discourage you from tying the knot, when you know in your heart that God has given you this promise, that you need to continue to stand and continue to trust that God has not just said, go for that person, hold on to that person. Because you have to understand, God's not capable of lying. So, and I had this discussion with my friend, and I thought, well, with Hezekiah, God can change his mind. I know that he did. But I also know that God can see ahead of us, and he can see from his end to our beginning. So he's able to see everything in between, be in the ending, but maybe we haven't fully seen what's in the next chapter. And sometimes I wonder too, because I think about it this way. I'm going, is my partner, is she God's best for my life, or have I missed it? or has it ever come yet, And so a lot of times when God will give you a promise and he'll tell you that that's your spouse, he's going to confirm it through other people too. And he might use an unbeliever. He might anoint an unbeliever just to say, that person's your spouse. That's going to be your wife. And you know what? They might not know where it's coming from, where they're getting their information from. They just know that suddenly they opened up their mouth and they said something to you, and you just got your fourth confirmation, but you don't know whether to trust it or not. So I'm going to tell you, trust what God gives you. If he gives you an answer and he gives you a confirmation and it came from him and it's been confirmed more than once and you prayed about it, you got on your knees, you fasted. Some of you need to constantly, and I will say this, I don't know who this might be for, but I'm just going to tell you guys that take the time to trust the Father, and maybe a partial fast, maybe just a small partial fast where you just spend that time with the Lord and just get to know the Father more, and just start thanking him for your spouse, like it's, my David, my Amy, my Bridget, whatever. Just start thanking God for them. Like, just give him praise and glory in advance. Give him a prophetic testimony, okay? Give him a testimony of that, yes, you're going to do this, even though things haven't necessarily transpired yet. And, I've done that. And there's a lot of times that I'm glad that God has done what he can to help me, because I may not be alive. So I'm just going to put this out here as I finish this one up. I want you guys to understand that God has a plan for your life, and you got to continue to make, continue to believe, even when it looks impossible. Because I'm going to tell you, impossibility is more in his words, that he wants to make it look impossible. He might allow the enemy just to mess with you. But I'm going to tell you that you need to just continue to trust the Father and know that he is going to work things out. So, and I'm going to remind you that the closer you look, the less you see. I'm going to use this, that came from Now You See Me, but I'm going to use this as a way to communicate to you guys that in this season, in this time frame, that when God has given you a promise and you try to magnify that promise and just trying to just accept and praise him for it, you might not see as much of the details than when you're so up close to it. So you might have to step back a little bit just to say, okay, now I understand, because a lot of you might need to ask the Father, why is it taking so long? What's going on behind the scenes? Is there, what is going on that I can't see? You see, a lot of times God only gives us a partial revelation because he's not going to reveal his master plan. But obviously for a number of reasons. He doesn't want the enemy to get the idea that he's about to deliver your spouse to you, and then he gets the bright idea that your spouse is on the way and decides to cause a major accident and kills your spouse. We don't want that. So I'm going to tell you, monitoring spirits floating around, you can have any ungodly spirit floating around you trying to gather information. Keep your mouth shut. Keep your relationship private. I would confuse, block, and scramble the enemy's pathways to you. I would start to cover your spouse. Start every night. Pray over them, believe for them. Pray blessings into their life, and just let God know how much you appreciate them, and don't give up. This is a battlefield. This isn't a recreation room. You came into this world, you came in to fight. You came in to, glorify the Father and to be able to win people to the Lord, because that's obviously for your heart. You want your heart in the right place. So, go before the Father. And if there's anyone on here, if you clip on my video by accident and you don't know Jesus as your Savior, I would suggest you give your life to the Lord. Just say, Jesus, come into my heart and be my Savior. I believe that you died on the cross for me and that you rose again on the third day and that my name will be written in the Lamb's Book of Life because you died for me. And I ask you to be the Lord of my life. And I ask you to be my Savior. Jesus, come and live on the inside of me. And so if any one of you guys pray that prayer, I believe that you just got born again. Okay? And so I'm going to basically put this where you guys can understand that God has a plan for your life. And he's not going to just sit there and just reveal all the details. He's not just going to spit out all the cards, flip over 52 cards from the deck and say, here you go, here's how it's all going to happen, whatever. No, he's not like that. He's not going to tell you a million times that, hey, he's not going to show you the whole master plan. So we can forget about that one. But if any one of you guys need a word or coaching calls or anything like that, or just need a word from me or encouragement or mentorship, just reach out to me, and my information will be available. So God bless you guys, and I hope the best for you. And I will be praying for all of those down in Florida as well that just had this damage. And I will be releasing something for that later tomorrow. God bless.